Welcome to the February 20th edition, the first Sunday edition without a football game to talk about or that just happened. Really sad. And I think we'll be okay. We'll survive. We've got some good stuff here. We're going to talk Super Bowl futures. We've got a couple of segments that people have wanted that we're bringing back and a new one that is aligned with an old segment that everyone loved. Quibi is back. Recommendations are back. It's going to be a great show. Let's rock. I was also told that there is a sequel to the Eric referee basketball stories that you teased. You texted me last night and you were like, "Hey, I've got a story for you." So I know I kind of want to save it for the end, but I'm also just really anxious. I want to hear this story.
So I just got back from my oldest game. She had one yesterday. She had one today. So I have a couple funny stories, hopefully, for the people. In the game yesterday, there was this referee who's probably like 60, tall, kind of like a tall, thin guy. Looked like he had just smoked a fatty. Just he was moving around really slowly, really nonchalantly, kind of just there, right? No reffing, just vibes. And so it gets to the end of the first quarter, and there was somebody like sitting like maybe 5 feet away from me who was wearing like a Joe Cool sweatshirt. And this referee walks over to him and goes, "Is that Joe Burrows?" And he says Burrows, not Burrow. He goes, "Is that Joe Burrows on your sweatshirt?" And so then he proceeds to talk to this guy about the Super Bowl, how bad of a call the thing on Logan Wilson was, how close they got. They'll be back next year. Meanwhile, all the girls are back on the court, lined up, ready to play. This other referee is like tapping his foot. Both coaches are like, and this guy's just talking to this parent and has like no sort of awareness that we're all like, all staring at him while he's like having this like mid-afternoon conversation. And it's unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. And it all started with, "Is that Joe Burrows?"
Self-awareness is not something that is given out for free. That's for sure.
No.
We have a basketball game today, and I'm pretty excited to see. There's apparently referees. I haven't played, so we're playing in like a PFF. We have a PFF team. We're playing in a I don't know, you used to call it a rec league, basically. I have not played in a basketball game with referees in a really, really long time. And I don't think you have either. I'm a little interested to see how this goes.
Since I played in a men's league that had refs, yeah.
It was going to be interesting. Who's more likely to get a tech, me or you?
I got kicked out of like AAU tournaments for technicals and stuff, and like I was a very big hothead when I was younger. I'm far more like now being like a parent and just seeing like the other side and being like I remember just one game last week I yelled foul once, and I looked at another parent. I'm like, I promised I wouldn't do this shit, and like so I feel like I'm conditioned to be like a little bit more less likely to get technical maybe than you at this point.
I think it should be pretty close. I think it should be -110 on both sides, to be honest.
Well, because I'm so I'm going to be down there following people or not following people.
You're
so
a physical guy.
Bit more likely for me to have something where I'm just like, that's not a foul. And whereas you're more of a guard, so then you might. I mean, they're probably not going to call as much stuff on you as me. So maybe that's it.
I'm more likely to like get very, very mad at myself and less likely to get mad at the refs. So I
By
think it
the
should
way,
be
there
about
was a
minus 110 both sides.
by the way, the funniest thing about like having like a kid in games is like, you can't really get mad at like the other kids for like not being any good. And the
I
funniest
mean, you
thing
can.
today is there's a couple of like of girls on my daughter's team. I call them fives because they're like the bigs. And and I just remember today there was like the other team shot, miss, no rebound, shot, miss, no rebound, shot. And I just like looked at my wife. I'm like, there's no boards, just vibes on this team. Like there's like the one kid just does not want to rebound at all. And
You know how I know you're old?
so funny.
You know how I know you're old? Because you're preaching about rebounding.
I know, I
Every
know, I
single
know.
coach, every single grown up, you get old when you start talking about rebounding and defense. If we win the battle on the boards, kids, and we play good defense,
I'm pretty
we'll
sure I
win this
said no
game.
rebounds, just vibes like 10 times today.
Oh, they must have loved you. They must have been really excited about your
I whispered it
presence.
to Stephanie. I didn't say it.
Because here's the thing, I'm
Poor
already
parents.
over that phrase, and I've just heard it twice. We have got some Super Bowl futures to talk about. Before we get into that, if you are going to bet on sports, and there are a lot of sports that are going on that are not football, I wouldn't call what happened in the NBA like skills competition / slam dunk competition sports, but you could have bet on it. But the NBA is going on. College basketball is going on. I have some golf bets that I'm sort of watching right now, and golf majors are about to happen. So it's a great opportunity for you to kind of like reset on your betting. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NBA, and get yourself ready to rock. Use promo code PFF and make a deposit as a new customer, and you can bet just $1 on any team and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's a great opening offer to get you rolling for this off season. Take that $150 in free bets and put it on a nice little Masters bet. A couple of good options there. I need to do a little more research before I break it down for you, but let's just say this: Brooks Koepka missed the cut this week. I think it could be a good opportunity to pounce on Brooks because he always shows up in majors.
Value.
Anyways, we'll value. I don't want to make that an official. I haven't put that in yet, but I'm very much considering it right now. Also, sportsbooks are not available in your state. I'm not suggesting that you move to another state, but with DraftKings, you can still get in on the action with daily fantasy. They have huge cash prizes for basketball contests. Of course, March Madness is coming up as well. So you want to go get yourself ready to rock. DraftKings Sportsbook promo code PFF, bet just $1 on any NBA team. You get $150 in free bets if they win. That's promo code PFF. DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Minimum 21 plus age and location requirements vary by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and a full list of requirements and state-specific responsible gaming resources. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's do some Super Bowl futures here. These odds courtesy of our friends at DraftKings and the DraftKings Sportsbook. How would you like to kind of think about this? I guess maybe the right question to start out with is, when you're going to bet Super Bowl futures, what's your mindset? Are you looking for like three different teams kind of all leveled in different, by different kind of odds? Are you looking to stay away from favorites? How do you approach it?
Yeah, I think firstly, I think it's a way to steady expectations for the season, right? So like for me, the question isn't even like betting right away. It's what has changed, what is happening to the league at large. And then, once you sort of stack the things on top of each other, you're like, okay, you know, then you can sort of see things that pop out at you, right? So one example here. So we have, your DraftKings has Kansas City and Buffalo as the two favorites. They are plus 750. Last season, basically right away, you could have got, at times, I think this was Kansas City was the favorite last year, but they were plus 550, right? Plus 750. And the easiest way to do this, by the way, if you just want to find break even, it's just, if it's a plus price, just take 1 over, if it's 750, then put 850 underneath, 8.5, right? That's how you get the break even percentage for a bet like that. And last year, and so plus 750 for for the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs is 11.76 break even. So if you think either one has a 12% or better chance to win the Super Bowl, it has value. Last year at this time, Tampa Bay was 6 or 7 to 1. I think it was 6 to
I think
1.
it was plus 650.
Yeah, and 650. And the Kansas City Chiefs were plus 550 in some places, plus 600 in other places. So on first blush, what this is showing is that the league is starting to spread out a little bit, right? Kansas City is still one of the favorites. They are no longer the favorite, and their likelihood to win the Super Bowl per these odds have gone down from last year to this year. That's one thing to initially look at. I think that's a very interesting thing. The next one is to look at teams and how they've sort of changed since even the postseason, right? So looking at two teams specifically, and I hate to do this to you, George, but San Francisco and Cincinnati are both per DraftKings 14 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. Both of those teams were something. I know Cincinnati specifically was 20 to 1 going into the playoffs this year to win the Super Bowl, right? San Francisco started the year 12 to 1 last year, depending upon where you look. I think
got up to 12 to 1. I think they were 14 to 1 for a lot of the offseason.
So they basically stayed the same, but they were longer than 14 to 1, I believe, going into the playoffs this year. And so you think about this logically, even though the Bengals and the Niners as 4 and 6 seeds were long shots, they made a pretty decent run. And the number of things that have to go right for them when you start the playoffs is far shorter, isn't it, than the list of things that have to go right for them this offseason, this regular season, and next postseason, right? Like, so those are numbers to me that I think just don't make as much sense as maybe some of the more long shots available on the market.
Yeah, I would generally agree with you, although I think there are a couple things to take into consideration. So I think Cincinnati and San Francisco are very different. The San Francisco 14 to 1 is interesting because I personally believe they've still got a shot at like the Tom Brady thing. To me is still weird. I don't fully believe that he's actually retired. I think he could be waiting on a call from San Francisco. That would obviously change those quite a bit. I don't know. I don't believe that that's baked into this at all, but it would be baked into which one would I rather bet. So if you said, hey, make a bet on either San Francisco or Cincinnati at 14 to 1, I'm betting on San Francisco in a heartbeat, like not even remotely close. And that's not to say anything bad about Cincinnati. They have a very tough division, just like San Francisco does. They also just played in the Super Bowl and lost. And that is a little bit of extra fatigue, a little bit of extra that they have to overcome going into next season. We've seen how that's worked out for teams in the past. It's been a disaster. And they also have this ratification of the decisions that they've made this year that may have been minus EV, as evidenced by the extensions for Zach Taylor. Cincinnati's offense still is, in my opinion, uncreative and lacks, like, I'm just not buying into that being sustainable. And so I'm not trying to sound like a hitter, but that would be an obvious one for me. Dallas is also 14 to 1. And that one's interesting because if you're thinking about betting on a team to go win the Super Bowl, I'll tell you how I approach this. I immediately looked at the two conferences. The AFC is a gauntlet. I mean, first off, they have the two favorites of plus 750 in Kansas City and Buffalo. I'm not totally sure that Kansas City should be tied with Buffalo, or that Buffalo shouldn't be the outright favorite, given how tough Kansas City's division is, the fact that Denver could get Aaron Rodgers. The AFC is just way harder. So if you're looking at a team to make a run and win the Super Bowl, the NFC is the place that I would look. Dallas is interesting, although Dallas always gets a lot of love. I generally thought about where I would bet here at like basically every team after the set of 14 to 1. So that was kind of my mindset.
Here's another thing about, because I agree with you on the Bills, even though it kills me to say this, the Buffalo Bills here have a tough schedule. Like, they had a very easy schedule this year. In 2022, they have Green Bay, Tennessee, which is the 1 seed in the conference. Obviously New England twice, Miami twice, both teams with winning records. Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Kansas City, Los Angeles Rams. So it's not easy for them. Kansas City, though, has the NFC West, which is, four teams that are all playoff caliber. They have the AFC West, which is going to be whatever it is. I mean, 2 games against Herbert, 2 games against Carr, 2 games against Denver, possibly with Aaron Rodgers. They have a game against Tennessee. They have a game against Cincinnati again. They have a game against Buffalo, and they have a game against Tampa Bay, who could very well do some things in the offseason and make them competitive. So I think this is very much a nod to what you and I think, which is like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes are the two best quarterbacks in football. Mahomes is probably a slight favorite, but the team for Buffalo is, and like, I'll be honest, like, I think the coaching staff for Buffalo maybe is a little bit better than the Chiefs. So they sort of put them at even as sort of a nod to the two best quarterbacks. But to me, it's not a great, I wouldn't bet either one. And here's a little bit of like sort of, folks, asking for a little bit of education on this stuff. This is what we're going to do. If you take all the break even probabilities, right? So for Kansas City and Buffalo, it's 11.76. For the Rams at 10-1, it's 9.09. Dallas, all the 14-1 teams, it's 6.67. And you add them up, right? If you add them up, you're going to get a number that's greater than 100%, because obviously the sports book needs a reason to take your bet. The sharpness of the market, and we're using DraftKings because it's familiar with us, but you could use Circa, you could use FanDuel, you could use Pinnacle when they post theirs. But the sharpness of the market is obviously the size of the overround, right? The overround is there to protect the books from uncertainty. Tampa Bay, Brady coming back instead of retiring, or to your point, San Francisco getting Brady, or Aaron Rodgers going to Denver, so on and so forth. Like, they don't want to be hugely exposed. They want a little bit of they want a little bit of cushion. So that overround for the DraftKings market currently is 23.79%. So what that means is, if you are betting into this market right now, you need to have a sizable edge to make that bet for a few reasons. One, the difference between the implied probability and the break-even probability is as big as 2% for some teams. And for other teams, it's, a factor, it's a few tenths of a percent for some of the long shots. But it's huge. So you need an edge to overcome that. And then additionally, you're tying your money up for the better part of 12 months here. So if you have an edge in, like, let's say another sport, or you have an edge in, NFL draft props and things like that, you're giving up the opportunity to capitalize on that by putting your money on some of these futures tickets right away.
By the way, so the difference between a break-even probability, when we reference that's the percentage of the time that you have to believe that team will win in order for your bet to be plus EV. And those are going to be higher than the implied probability. In other words, your implied probability is, okay, this is what the implication is based on the sports books prices. But for you to break even, you've got to do a little bit better than that, right? And that's exactly, as you're talking about, that's the tax that the sports book has. And it shouldn't be surprised. I think some people will hear that and go, oh, wow, that sounds like super crooked or like, unfair. That happens every single time you place a bet, right? When you see minus 110, it's not a coin flip, it's 53.4%, right? And those things are how the sports book is obviously going to give itself that little bit of extra cushion, because they need it. They want to make money. Yeah. They want to be profitable. Like, that's how it works.
And at minus 110, though, the difference is at minus 110, 52.38% is the break even. So you add those two things up, and the hold, which is what we're calling, the hold there is 4.8% ish for the sports book. So betting a game is obviously a lot less. You're giving a lot less of the house edge back to the house when you bet just a specific game. And so again, you have to have a really big conviction that number is either going to move in your direction, or you have a humongous edge to bet a future. And in another way, you sort of have, and there's sort of another aspect of this, which I think our friend Ben Brown writes about on the website a lot, is the type of sports book you actually want to bet these with is probably more of like a credit one, where you don't act like, where essentially it's a, one of these paper heads, like sort of offshore type of situations where you don't have to, it doesn't actually take out of your bankroll, if that makes sense. But that's a little bit deeper into it. George, the question that I have then, because
I think you lost some people with that one, but yeah, go ahead.
The difference between the break even and the implied obviously decreases exponentially as the further you go down, right? Which is why, like, say for example, the one bet that I really like, and I would possibly think about is Cleveland at 30-1, because there, you need a break even of 3.23. The implied there is 2.61. I think Cleveland has a much better roster than that number would imply. I also think you're fading Cincinnati, which I want to talk about in a second. Possibly fading Baltimore, although I also like Baltimore as well, maybe a little less just because of the way that the numbers are aligned. But the issue with these markets too is that unlike game by game betting or win totals, except for special books, like let's say Circa, when they pull them out, you can't explicitly fade a team here. Like I can't go and say, Cincinnati's 14-1. I think that's really stupid. Let me lay, and then it would end up being like minus 1,600, minus 1,700 on the no for Cincinnati to win the Super Bowl. In some places you can do that, but because of this over round of 23.79%, if I don't think the Bengals are going to win the Super Bowl, I still have to be a decent handicapper to go in and bet the teams I think will, in order to make money off of that notion.
Yeah, it's how you fade a team, right? We've talked about this a bunch, right? It's like, oh, I don't believe in this team, so in this division, I'm going to bet their rivals, right? And or a win total, where it's like, I really don't believe in this team, so I'll bet one of the other teams in the division, over win total. Cleveland is interesting. I kind of had a feeling that you were going to like Cleveland, so Cleveland is 30-1. Let me just run through the rest of the odds here, because we went up to the top, I think 6 favorites. So it goes Kansas City, Buffalo, plus 750, LA 10-1, Dallas, San Francisco, Cincinnati 14-1, Green Bay 16-1, Baltimore, Denver 20-1, Tampa Bay, Tennessee 22-1, New England, Chargers, Cardinals, Colts 25-1. Your Browns, Seattle Seahawks are both your Browns are 30-1. The Seahawks, the Saints, and the Vikings, your Vikings, are 35-1. The Dolphins and the Eagles are 40-1. Our Falcons, the Raiders, the Steelers, the Commanders, and take me a while to get used to saying that. The Panthers are 50-1. Chicago and the Giants are 80-1. Jacksonville is 100-1. Houston, New York, the Jets, and the Lions are 150-1. Disrespectful to put the Lions in the same breath as the Jets, and honestly kind of strange that the Jags aren't also plus I
think Houston's just 150-1 just because the division's so bad, and there's actually a path there. Whereas I guess there is not a path there. Thing going for them. The Jets are a better team than Houston and Detroit, I think, but they have the Bills and possibly the Patriots and the Dolphins to contend with.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked that you haven't gotten rid of your Jets love yet. Okay, let me throw a couple out here that I think have some value. Now, remember, my initial kind of hypothesis here is if you're going to pick a team to make it to the Super Bowl and win, the path in the NFC is just one that's going to be easier. And I'm going to look at a couple teams. The first team that I'm going to look at here is the Green Bay Packers at 16-1. You look, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't return, this number is going to plummet, right? But right now you're taking advantage of the fact that there's uncertainty there in Green Bay, and their recent playoff history has people really down on them. But there are a couple things that we know. Aaron Rodgers has been very, very good. Devontae Adams has been the best receiver in the NFL. They also dealt with injuries last year. They had Jair Alexander out for most of the year, Bakhtiari out for almost the entire year. And they are playing in a division that's not particularly good. Should be relatively easy for them to get to win that division. If not, also get the number 1 seed overall in the playoffs. And despite the fact that they lost to the Niners in Green Bay, that's still a formidable home field advantage. So that's one that I look at. Tampa Bay 22-1 is also really interesting to me because they have a path, I think, towards still getting a good quarterback. They're not going to get Tom Brady, but you look at that division, you have the Saints with a quarterback question mark. You have the Falcons, who have been a total and complete disaster. And the Panthers are 80-1, which I think is actually maybe too rich. So 22-1, I think that's interesting if they go get Watson or they get Russell Wilson or hell, even Kirk Cousins. I think that's a value. And then as I go down the list, a team that sticks out to me, and I know you're going to not like this one, but the Eagles at 40-1. And when you talk about, okay, what are you fading here? Well, I'm kind of fading the Dallas Cowboys. And I know the Cowboys have all the talent in the world to make it and win the Super Bowl. But there's something about the fact that Jerry Jones is already talking about his defensive coordinator being a head coaching candidate that makes me just go, yeah, I kind of want to fade that team winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, look, the NFC East has the AFC South, so that's nice. They also have the NFC North, which that's kind of going to be nice. Like, to me, the Eagles fade is less of a. It's actually less of, and they have like a Saints team that doesn't look quite as good. They have a Pittsburgh team that doesn't look quite as good. So, I'm gonna back off a little bit of my Eagles like hatred. And I don't even hate them. I just think that they're a team that kind of got happy off of an easier schedule last year. And obviously we found out in the playoffs that Tampa Bay team wasn't at their highest form and pretty much handled them in the playoff game, despite getting a ton of sharp money, in that game, moved it down from 10 to 7.5 by game time, maybe 7. But yeah, it doesn't look like their schedule is the murderer's row that Washington's was, when we made a similar move there. It's basically their division, which sucks, 2 divisions that very much could suck off, their schedule. And then they have the, where, the second place finisher in the South, which is the Saints, losing their head coach, Pittsburgh Steelers. That sort of off conference game. Well, they're losing their quarterback too. Not that that matters that much. So yeah, okay. That's not terrible. Can you see Jalen Hurts making a Super Bowl though?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. So Jalen Hurts he had the 10th best PFF grade this year. Now, a lot of that is his rushing ability, but his passing ability has been maligned to a point that is a bit more egregious than the data would say. They had a top 6. They were 6th in EPA per play on first and second downs last year. The other teams, by the way, in that were ahead of them, Tampa Bay, the Rams, Green Bay, San Francisco, Seattle, which I found to be actually pretty interesting. And if there were less question marks about Russell Wilson, that would be a team that I'd be interested in, although that division is particularly challenging in the NFC. But the Eagles also have 3 top 20 picks. And so, this draft is not one that we're particularly stoked on, but they they're in a position where they have, I think, the components that you would need to kind of be a spunky team. I will say this. I anticipate them being, to your point, the hipster pick very soon. So I'm getting out ahead. I'm getting ahead of this. I'm not going to become a hipster in the middle of the Eagles' love. I'm going to get out ahead of it.
They were 40 or something to 1 when they won the Super Bowl in 2017. And that was, second year of Wentz. Mm-hmm. This is second year of Hurts as a starter. As you said, I think, Sirianni's a lot better than what we thought. Gannon, I'm not hugely impressed with him. We sort of wondered why he got a little bit of head coaching looks, given their defense didn't do a ton of creative stuff last year. But one of the things we'll talk about maybe this podcast or the next one is, my thoughts on creativity on defense, I guess. And then, but look, this is a flyer. And again, this is one where, as you said, if you grab it now, maybe the hipster pick is for them to get down to 30-1, and then you're just holding a better ticket than everybody else is. So that's a good one. Here's an interesting thought that I have, and not that this matters because all of these are break evens or less than 2%, but this collection of teams: Atlanta, Las Vegas, Pittsburgh, Washington, Carolina.
Yeah,
I don't get it. I think I look, Vegas is a much better outfit than Carolina stinks, George.
Carolina's trash, dude.
I don't
can't.
have any idea how Carolina belongs in that group. Atlanta stinks too. Like we're not. Let's not get it twisted. They pushed 7 this year, which is thank God
by a miracle.
Yeah. Didn't get 7.5, so I lost some of those bets later when I continued to jump on the train. But they're better than freaking Carolina, right? They got their head on straight more than Carolina does. I know Matt Ryan is one more year, #1 more year. But like, I don't get Carolina being in this group. I think I can see Washington being in this group because if they go out and get a good quarterback, then they could obviously have a chance. Pittsburgh is in the similar strait. I think them getting Brian Flores and having him be assistant head coach and linebacker coach sort of shows that like this isn't a sort of retirement voyage for Mike Tomlin. Like he's still going to try to win. So like all those teams kind of deserve a thought by me. Carolina, if I could lay 50, if I could lay minus 6,000 on them, like I might, because I don't know. I just don't think, obviously you wouldn't do that, but you know what I'm saying. Like
who of that group? Yeah, I saw that and I was like, why isn't Carolina?
Carolina's like should be with the Jets, honestly.
Yes, agreed. And the one there that is, Chicago's 80-1. Like, give me Chicago at 80-1 before you're giving me Carolina at 50-1, 100%. But that 50-1 group is interesting because there are a couple of teams in there that I would consider, placing a long shot bet on. And I think Pittsburgh is the one, right? Here's the angle on Pittsburgh. I'm not going to sit here and continue to bury Big Ben after he's retired, but Big Ben was horrible, man. Like he was really, really, really bad. And they have talent on that team. I mean, they have TJ Watt is one of the maybe 5 best defenders in the entirety of the league. They've got receivers that can make plays with the football. And Mike Tomlin is a really good coach. I mean, that guy has put up with a ton of stuff and continues to be competitive. And they're in a position where there's a little bit of me that feels like they're planning on making some kind of move for a quarterback that can win now. Yeah. And so if that's the case, you're in a position to get a lot of value there at 51. Vegas is hard for me because I have a lot of skepticism about McDaniel bringing the Patriot way to Las Vegas. Like, good luck to you. And that division is so freaking hard. Yeah, and it could get harder. Like that division is not getting easier. The thing with the AFC West that's you have to price in, and I guarantee you, everyone's going to look at this. And I was going to ask you this: like, what's the team that when people look at this, they go, "Oh yeah, that's a no-brainer. I'm betting them," because I think there are 2.
This year, and I actually agree with this one. Baltimore 20-1.
Okay.
When everybody looks at this list, I think people jump to Baltimore at 20.
I want to talk about Baltimore in a second. Who's the other one?
The Chargers at 25-1.
Yeah.
But yeah,
everybody. The Chargers at 25-1. Yeah, and here's the thing: the Chargers at 25-1. If you were redistributing the teams into divisions, the Chargers at 25-1 would be a great bet. But the Chargers are in a division that it's only going to potentially get way harder, right? Like the only thing that could happen in the AFC West is that the Broncos either get Aaron Rodgers or a rookie quarterback that ends up being really good. They're not going to get a rookie quarterback that's worse than what they had before. Like it was trash. So the Chargers are that one where I know people are going to gravitate towards them, but it's like, their division is so tough. And I feel like the Raiders
I think the same thing's true about Pittsburgh, by the way, at 50-1. So like, this is my argument against a team like Pittsburgh, which I think it was similar to last year. And to me, you got to think about like, okay, for Pittsburgh to succeed, the Ravens and the Browns and the Bengals all have to falter. Mm-hmm. And I think what's interesting that happened this year was the Ravens and the Browns faltered, but the Cincinnati Bengals didn't, right? So it's sort of like you have to do, whereas I think with it's sort of an or for some of these other teams, but for the team, like if you're 4th place in the division, you need like the 3 teams ahead of you to all struggle. And like for various noisy reasons, the Ravens and the Browns did in 21, but the Bengals didn't, because, it's just bound to happen that one of those three teams would meet expectations. And then so Pittsburgh couldn't win the division, and, they barely squeaked into the playoffs. And I think that's true kind of like the Chargers are kind of the same thing, right? Like the Chargers to win the Super Bowl need Kansas City, who, in my opinion, didn't even have a great year last year. I don't think they met at, well, they went under the win total for the first time since Andy Reid was the coach. You need essentially what? Kansas City not to get better, the Raiders not to get better, and the Denver Broncos not to get better, and you to meet expectations, which to me is just like a thin needle to thread when you are the San Diego / Los Angeles Superchargers.
Yeah, I'd invest. Look, I really want to see the Chargers do well. I'd find other ways to invest in them. Like maybe I'm sure Herbert will be overvalued for MVP too, but whatever. Let's talk about the Ravens, because here's the thing, Eric. I looked at this and I immediately looked at Baltimore. In fact, I went into it before opening this up. I was like, I am really curious where Baltimore is going to be, because last year, and we haven't published this article yet, but we will. Ben Brown, and I forget who he did this with, but talks about WAR adjusted injuries lost. So in other words, how much did a team really suffer from injuries? And it's not just looking at overall, like how many injuries did you have, like what positions. And I think we can look at cluster injuries as well as something that we talk about a lot. The Ravens were torched from an injury perspective, especially in the secondary. There were so many games where they just had no one out there in the secondary. Obviously Lamar got injured, but there's something there that was still bugging me. And so I went and I looked at some of the data, because to me in 2019, they were just so damn efficient of an offense. And it wasn't just the running game. Their passing game was really efficient. They have been a below average offense using expected points added per play on first and second down over the past 2 years. And I guess my question to you is like, do you believe that is a little bit fluky? And if so, like why? Because there's a really strong case here, which is Lamar Jackson is one of the few singular talents at quarterback. John Harbaugh is a top 3, if not, 1 coach in the NFL. They have a ton of talent all over the roster. Why would you not bet them at 20-1 to win the Super Bowl?
Yeah, well, especially because, again, you're finally getting the tail on the Ravens here, right? Mm-hmm. Like this is a team that was favored to go to the Super Bowl coming into the playoffs in 2019. I think they were either first favorite or second favorite in 2020. And then last year they were in that sort of 10, 12-1 range. You continue to get a fatter tail, right, in the payout here.
Love it when you give a fatter tail.
Last year you got Ronnie Stanley injured. Marlon Humphrey was injured. I just tweeted this thing. Marlon Humphrey tore his pectoral muscle against the Steelers. The Ravens did not win another game. They were 8-3, and they lost 6 straight games after Marlon Humphrey got injured.
Fight Tyler Huntley.
Yeah, think about this. So look at here are the top 4 players for the Baltimore Ravens in cap hits in 2022. Lamar Jackson, 5th-year option. He missed 6-7 games last year. I can't even remember the number. Ronnie Stanley is 2nd. He missed, basically the whole season. Yep. Marlon Humphrey missed the aforementioned 5 full games in the end of that 6th game. And then Marcus Peters is 4th. He missed the whole season. Mm-hmm. So you look at that team and, you get those players back, right? They got some great value on guys like Tyus Bowser in free agency. Chuck Clark is still a good player. I think that, Patrick
Bateman looked really good last year. Like Hollywood Brown started to figure it out. Mark Andrews was, and
I say this as a Travis Kelce stand, Mark Andrews was the best tight end in the NFL.
Don't you dare. George Kittle exists.
Mark Andrews was the most valuable tight end in the NFL last year.
That's because he had literally no one. Like they were just behind all the time and chucking it up over the middle.
Sure,
but George, if you are drafting tight ends right now, George Kittle goes number 1.
Course,
don't you dare.
I would take. Yeah, Kittle's younger and better at a lot of things than Kelce is. Kelce's had a more accomplished career, but the The Andrews thing, though, we have to give credit where it's due, right? Most of us thought Andrews, or at least I did, thought Andrews was a guy who benefited big time from that offense, right? We thought that he was always getting so many layups on these crossers in play action, and everything's so wide open for him. Mark Andrews last year with Tyler Huntley at quarterback for a decent chunk of the year was making plays by himself, right? Like he was getting open, he was making contested plays, he was running after the catch. Mark Andrews, I think, solidified himself last year as a bona fide top 3 tight end in the NFL. And that was something that we all thought he was more of a product of the system than anything else. And I think he proved a lot, at least proved me
We thought
wrong.
he was 4th.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
like he was behind Darren Waller last year, and now he's top 3.
But I think he's in the conversation to be the top guy. But nonetheless, top 4 players in cap hit this year for the Ravens, missed a significant part of the year last year, and did so at 3 valuable positions: cornerback, left tackle, and quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big time fan of betting into them this year. Again, they don't necessarily need. So think about this. Because they essentially need one thing to happen for this door to open. They need the Bengals to falter, right? They don't need like the Pittsburgh not being very good is a favorite, right?
Yeah, but is that the
not
thing?
Being very good is also a favorite. They have less of a path than like Pittsburgh would out of the 4 spot.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I don't think that that's the thing they need to have go right, though. And I agree. This is one of So I think it's going to be. I think the Bengals are going to have a tough time just making it back to the playoffs next year, and people assume they're just going to, go to 5 more Super Bowls. That's ridiculous. The thing for me that needs to happen for the Ravens is their offense with Lamar Jackson has not been consistently good enough over the last 2 years.
Yes.
That's the thing that needs to improve. And I think it can. I absolutely think it can. Especially if they have, a guy like Ronnie Stanley, who's top 3 left tackle in the NFL when healthy. And was interesting what we saw last year before kind of all the injuries came crashing down was that Lamar Jackson was throwing the ball better as a player when the team was behind than he ever had before. That was kind of the big knock, right? In that year that they did really, really well in 2019, they had the fewest snaps from behind over any team the past 6 seasons. Then the next year, it kind of caught up to them. What was interesting is that Lamar Jackson and that team sort of figured out how to throw the ball. It was small sample size when losing. So I have some faith there. That's why I like them at 20-1. Any other teams that you want to make a case for betting, or shall we move on?
Well, I know we talked about this briefly, and I think you did it. You used it on your NFL Network spot.
Yes, I did. I borrowed your take.
I like the Jaguars.
I sent you a thank you.
Yeah, I do like the Jaguars. I just think, again, not that, and people are like, oh, who's the next Bengals? Chances are no one. The fact is, the Rams and the Bengals are the 2 lowest odds teams to make the Super Bowl. And I think the Patriots were similar, 1, but it's not going to happen likely. But if a team is going to make that run, it's going to be the Jaguars at something like 100-1, or depending upon where you look. Young talent, bad division, coach who has a clue, quarterback who has a lot of talent. That to me is the angle that you can make there. I wouldn't put anything more than a few bucks on it, but it's a thought. It's a thought that you could have.
Yeah, I think that's a cool long shot. I don't know that I like any of the super long shots.
No, you're not going in on the Jets?
I'm not going in on the Jets. As much as I love Dan Campbell, I'm not going in on the Lions either. Chicago is kind of interesting.
Chicago's going to stink, man.
I know, and that's I just have a hard time. I'll tell you what, the Eagles, honestly, at 40-1 are the biggest long shot that I sort of like. And I know you hate the Vikings, but I kind of like the Vikings at 35-1 too, totally turning things over. Potential. That's kind of saying, okay, here's a way to bet, with the Aaron Rodgers going outside of Green Bay, right? Because if he does leave Green Bay, the way to kind of capitalize on that is the fact that the Vikings become a huge favorite.
I don't think I'm going to short the Vikings at all this year. I mean, I think that there's a path to them, being okay. It depends upon what they do with the quarterback, but it's another situation where you have to be careful. You have to look at like where, like do what we did with Philadelphia, where my initial thought process was, yeah, I think they're going to regress because they had it so easy this year. Well, they have it easy again this year. So, make sure, you look at what the division looks like. That is the case for Detroit, by the way. The Vikings could move on from Cousins and go with a bridge guy. The Bears could stink. I mean, if you look at the Bears roster, I mean, if Justin Fields doesn't work out, that team's going to win 3 games. And Green Bay, if they move on from Adams and Rodgers, good luck. My Matt LaFleur theory will be tested. Let's just say. So that's the path for Detroit. Is the entire division crumbling and them sort of like Jared Goffing their way to a 9-8 4 seed. But that's whatever.
We have some segments coming up. Before we get there, you can get 25% off right now on any PFF subscription because you are listening to this podcast. Exactly. That's all you had to do was be a loyal listener. Use promo code FORECAST, FORECAST, and get 25% off. Now it's weird. Now is like the best time to get a subscription. The reason for that is that you get a year-long subscription, carries you all the way through the most important parts of the year, right? You've got the draft and free agency. PFF does that content better than any other place on the planet by a mile. So get all of PFF's locked article content, or NFL draft guide, or free agency rankings, all of that. Plus, prepare yourself for your fantasy league unlike anyone else, right? Be ready with all of that stuff as soon as it comes out. Don't wait till the last minute. Be ready to rock. And then, of course, get all of PFF's awesome betting tools, our player props tool, our best bets tool, our betting dashboards, and there'll be some new stuff, some exciting stuff that you want to be in on. Plus, of course, all of the premium data and PFF grades that make PFF the best subscription in sports. Go to pff.com, use promo code FORECAST, FORECAST, and get that hooked up ASAP. Also, we are proud to be presented by our friends at Western and Southern Financial Group. When you're focusing on making roster moves, remember, in your real life, you need to be focused on making some money moves. And that's where Western and Southern can help you, whether it's buying your first home, planning to start a family, if you're, completely crazy, or wondering how to make your money grow, which I think everyone should be interested in. Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions help you rest assured on game day. Don't think it's just like happening behind the scenes. Go make some investment strategies now, and then let that work for you to your advantage. Go to westernsouthern.com/PFF to see how they can help you get started on the path to financial success. All right. We have
Juwan Howard just threw a punch post game here.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, apparently, and he tried to punch the other team's coach.
Oh my goodness. You're getting ready for college basketball.
Oh, yeah.
That's what you're telling me. That's what you're telling me.
So let's start this new segment.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to take the lead here and
I'm excited.
And we're going to test you. This is called, and we're workshopping the name, but this is ball sack or just whack.
Let us know what you think. I like that a lot. Just whack, also sponsored by Manscaped.
Manscaped, exactly. Brought to you by Manscaped. So I'm going to read a quote, and you're going to have to decide if it was just whack, so somebody just being stupid,
okay,
and saying something that was nuts, or a quote, a fake quote made by the parody account Ballsack Sports.
Okay.
I'm going to start with one. Myles Gaskin is my 3rd overall running back in Dynasty leagues, and someone you should be acquiring at all costs. He's fast. He was 0.2 of a second away from running a 4.3 flat. He can catch passes out of the backfield. He will capitalize, ball out in 2022 with Doug Peterson calling plays. Ball sack or just whack?
That is. So if you're doing that has to be just whack, because that sounds exactly like every single fantasy, average fantasy and analyst tweet right now.
So this is by Drake Jordan, Dynasty Champ 1. I do believe that this is actually
so that's ball sack, because Drake Jordan's a parody account.
Yes. So this one's actually a trick question, because it is.
Yeah.
It is
so
like
I kind of got it right.
but it is actually a real quote that somebody tried to use, and I just thought it was funny because I can't wait for season again where it's everybody's season. But the way that you knew that this was a parody was 0.2 of a second away from running a 4-3 flat.
I didn't even catch that.
Okay.
That's amazing. Okay.
Here's the next one.
That was good. That was a good start to this segment.
Okay. This is a quote. I think greatest shooter of all time is subjective. If I had to pick one shooter with my life on the line, I'm probably taking MJ. I think it makes for great conversation, though. I'm blessed to coach one of the very best in Steph.
That is obviously a Steve Kerr quote, and I think it is ball sack.
Ball sack. Okay, you're 2-0.
There's no way that Steve Kerr is giving that quote, actually.
I mean, also, like, Michael Jordan was an amazing basketball player. But like, who would even say, like, who would force up a take like that?
Yeah, well, the question is poorly asked, in my opinion. So if you have the game on the line and you have to put the ball in someone's hands and say, go win the game, you're going with Michael Jordan. Saying who you want to take a shot, it's like, well, yeah, if it's a fucking wide open 3, yes, I want Steph Curry to take that shot. But anyways, I digress. My basketball takes, Eric, are starting to sharpen. Okay.
Okay. All right. Here's another one. Everybody's just running from the grind nowadays, teaming up with each other. Back in my day, we did it the hard way. If you can't win alone, you're considered a bum, period. Kevin Garnett.
This is good because this one is ball sack. And the reason you know it's ball sack is that Kevin Garnett literally had to team up with Paul Pierce and Ray Allen to win a championship. But people believing that this was correct and this was like a real quote is
him yelling this one's for
hilarious.
Soda after winning it too, by the way.
Yeah.
That's like Cousins going to Washington and winning a championship. All right, I got one more.
Okay.
And actually, I have two, but I'm going to limit the segment to one more.
Okay.
You get to choose one cereal for the rest of your life. What is it? Frosted Flakes, parentheses, Crackling Oat Bran, a close number 2. And of course, Let It Get Soggy. And then there's the emoji of the fingers, sort of like the put together with the thumb.
Yeah. Okay. Soggy cereal is absolutely disgusting.
Cereal in general is a child's food at this point.
Please let me finish my take. I think people that eat cereal are kind of ridiculous.
Serial killers?
No. How cereal is not good. I'm just going to throw that out there. Like, it's just not. There's so many things that you can eat that are so much better than cereal, not just from a taste perspective, but like obviously from a nutrition perspective. Cereal stinks. Cereal's awful. You want to get mad at me? Get mad at me. You're wrong. Cereal sucks. This sounds to me like something Dan Orlovsky would say.
Yeah, so it was exactly Dan Orlovsky. So
it is. Is it Dan Orlovsky?
So it's just whack. It's from Dan Orlovsky. It's just whack.
It is.
That's by the way the worst takes of all time. I did somehow get through this segment. This one, it will not happen again. But I got through this segment without quoting one of the Acho brothers.
I'm actually shocked because didn't one of them say?
Yeah, something? The other one that's on the page is him ranking the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. This is Sam Acho, not Emmanuel
Sacho.
Before you play the javelin Acho.
Yep.
Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Matt Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, and Joe Burrow or Joe Burrows, depending upon which Acho brother I would say.
That's interesting who he left out. That's very that's an interesting one from him.
Yeah. Okay, so that was your initial ball sack or just whack segment.
That was good. I have so I'm bringing Quibi shows back. So the way this works is I'm going to read you 2 shows, and you're going to have to decide which one is Quibi and which one is made up. You ready?
Okay.
I actually think we used to do it differently. I would read you the show and you decide if that was Quibi or not. But I only have 2 here. So one of them is Quibi, one of them is not. And you're going to have to figure out which is which. All right. First show. It's called Wireless. A self-obsessed college student becomes stranded in the Colorado mountains and has to rely on his quickly dying phone to survive. Tune in on Quibi and the Quibi app to see whether Tyler will survive. Okay, that's one. The next show is called Wired. As a small boy, he couldn't sleep. Now, as he grows up, Jack Brown realizes why. His brain isn't made like yours and mine. It's a computer. Can he learn enough human skills to save the planet, or will his supercomputing go to waste? Tune into Quibi every Friday night to find out.
I think so. Here's the thing. The second show's actually probably got a chance. So the first show is Quibi. Wireless is Quibi.
You're right. And
because the second show actually could be good. The first show has no fucking chance. And that's why it's Quibi. And that's why there's no Quibi anymore.
The funny thing doing this was I was like, shit, I actually came up with a better show.
Like
yo, my phone is dying. How will I survive here in the Colorado
Quibi just
mountains?
getting dragged through the mud a year after they basically were like, you're right, we suck.
I mean, oh my God, absolutely incredible. Okay, those were two new segments. I enjoyed them both. Hopefully you guys did. If you did or you didn't, let us know. We have one last segment. It is recommendations. I took a sneak peek at yours and I'm very excited for them. I also have a recommendation. I'll let you go first.
Cool. So as the season has ended, I've transitioned away from books on Audible to reading them, actually reading them. The one that I just finished up, which was on Audible, which is, I think, by somebody who's kindred spirits to you. I listened to Taste by Stanley Tucci. I thought it was great.
You listened to it?
I listened to it on yeah. And he actually, like, I love books where the author actually talks through it. So like Michael Lewis will do that for some of his. And Stanley Tucci was the actual orator there. And he was wonderful. I didn't realize he had cancer. And so that was something he revealed in that book. But he talked about it's so funny because he's an actor and he sort of viewed acting as like this thing that he had to do so that he could eat great food, you know, which I thought was funny. And then the next one, and
it's how I view life as well.
This is the book that I just finished. Then One Year by Chris Andrews. Andrews is the sportsbook operator. Is a sportsbook operator in Vegas. He had a book called Then One Day, which is when he talked about his life coming up through the ranks and building, you know, sports books and things like that. But actually, and this is a very interesting one because I also read a book about last year called Unprepared, which was like a day-by-day look at like different quotes and press clippings about COVID. And that one was kind of sad. This one was actually like how a sportsbook operator day by day like went through the COVID season. And so he would be like, November 22nd, 2020, we lost 10 games today. You know, we got killed on Eagles +6. And it was like kind of this like interesting look into what it must be like to run the sports book and how it was, you know, the uncertainty was supercharged in the COVID era.
You know, that got me thinking about something that we didn't talk about today, but would be an interesting conversation, which is, did you read the DraftKings earnings report?
I did.
That came out last week. So I read it. I also listened to their earnings call, and there's something interesting about, and you've listened to a ton of earnings calls. We've talked about this before, but like, there's something interesting to like reading it, but then also like listening to people like disseminate the information. It's a very interesting conversation to have. We won't have it on this podcast, but could be something we do in the future. My recommendation. So I've been oscillating between like, you know, things that you can buy that people give you shit for because they're rather like they're nice and they're somewhat expensive versus things that are not. And this something that is kind of in between because you need a Netflix account to watch it. But if you're savvy, you should be able to figure that out. I watched The Tinder Swindler on Netflix. Have you watched that show or that?
I think I'm going to watch it tonight, actually, because I know that you talked about it and it must have gotten your stamp of approval. So it might be worth mine.
It is. And you so here's my advice on it. You kind of have to stick with it. You're sitting there and you're going like, wait, like what? Like, where's the swindling? Like, when does this happen? Like, what's going on? It does not disappoint. I'm not going to ruin it for anyone, but there are so many takeaways that you can have from it about like life slash like the difference between like the United States and like Europe. It's fascinating. I highly recommend it. Go check it out. It's good probably with a bottle of wine and a significant other as well. Eric, I think Steph would enjoy it. So you can give me some credit when you have a nice night enjoying that. It's a good one. I really enjoyed it. It's kind of long, but you will appreciate it at the end. That was our podcast. A Sunday podcast, not done late at night, really rejuvenating. We'll be back
we have two
on
basketball games. Imagine playing basketball at 2 a.m.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. We got to go rest up for our games here. We'll be back on Wednesday evening. We love you all. Thanks for hanging out. Peace.